Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we plunge into the stack of sources to uncover the hidden histories of the world's most dynamic places.
And today we are tackling a real giant, Ikebukuro.
A giant is right. If you've ever been to Tokyo, you know this place. It's just a colossal, neon-soaked transportation hub.
It's officially one of Tokyo's three major deputy cities, or Fukutoshin, right alongside Shinjuku and Shibuya.
When you stand there, it's almost overwhelming. The massive crowds, the towering department stores flanking the station on the east and west, it just feels immense.
And the numbers back that feeling up. We are talking about, before the pandemic at least, the third busiest railway station in the entire world.
Wow, what kind of numbers are we talking about daily?
In 2019, the figures were around 2.65 million people every single day.
2.5 million. That's not just a crowd. That's a small city's population passing through one station every 24 hours.
It's an operational miracle, really. You have 4 different rail companies operating 8 distinct lines, all converging on this one hyper-concentrated point.
It's a critical connection point. A kitsusetsuten, as they say, especially for everyone commuting in from Saitama Prefecture.
Absolutely. For Villians, Ikebukuro isn't a destination. It's the necessary gateway to the rest of Tokyo. It is the definition of a modern concrete metropolis.
But here's the real reason for this deep dive, the central question we're going to unpack. How did this titan of steel and concrete, how did it spring up from what was, just a little over a century ago, mostly empty farmland?
And not just empty. It was considered a quiet, marshy, and frankly dangerous village.
Exactly. This isn't a story of some grand top-down urban plan. It's a history driven by accident, engineering failures, natural disaster, and just pure, raw commercial ambition. So let's start at the very beginning, right there in the mud.
Let's do it.
So if we rewind the clock, say, back to the Edo period, the 17th, 18th centuries, Ikebukuro is, well, it's barely on the map.
It's barely anything. It was known as Ikebukuro Mura, which just means Ikebukuro Village, and it was just a tiny settlement in the vast, wild expanse of the Musashino Plateau.
That isolation is so important to grasp. We think of Edo, modern-day Tokyo, as this sprawling, ancient city.
But large parts of it, especially the highlands, were wilderness. If you look at historical maps from the period, like the Bunken Sheidozu, the area that is now Ikebukuro it's mostly blank space.
Blank space, you mean just nothing drawn in?
Almost nothing. You'll see some lines indicating rice paddies, maybe a few fields, but that's it. It shows you just how sparse the population was.
Which is such a stark contrast to its neighbors, even back then.
A huge contrast. Shinjuku was already a major post town, a shukuba, on the Kushikaido Highway. It was a vital stop for travelers.
And Shibuya had residences for powerful daimyo lords. It was already part of the political landscape.
Exactly. Ikebukuro had none of that. No townhouses, no major temples that would act as a community hub, no samurai residences important enough to be drawn on the maps. It was just an agricultural backwater.
And its defining feature really was the water. It was low-lying and wet.
Which brings us to the name itself, Ikebukuro. Now today, you see owls everywhere.
The kukuru mascot, right? It's on everything. The police box, the buses.
And it's a brilliant piece of modern marketing, but it's not the true origin of the name. It's actually a pun.
A pun.
Yes. The word for owl, fukuru, sounds exactly like the word for bag, fukuro, which is the second part of Ikebukuro.
Ah, so Ikebukuro means pond bag. Okay, so where does a bag come into this?
The most credible theory says the name comes from a very specific bag-shaped pond that was located right near the current west exit.
Where exactly? Can you still see it?
No, it's long gone. It was right around where the Metropolitan Hotel stands today. The pond was called Fukuroik, or bag pond, sometimes Maruik, round pond.
This pond was important enough to name the whole village after it.
Absolutely, because it was the source of the Tsurumaki River. For a community based on rice farming, a reliable source of water for irrigation was its lifeblood. The history of Ikebukuro is literally rooted in a body of water that now lies buried under a luxury hotel.
Is there anything left at all, any marker to show where it was?
There is, actually. The pond was filled in during the development boom of the 1970s, but in 1998, a small park was created on a piece of land right next to where it used to be.
What's it called?
Moto Ikebukuro Historic Park. Moto meaning original or former. It's a quiet little memorial to the literal pond bag that gave the entire district its name.
It's amazing. A concrete jungle built on a forgotten pond. Now, you mentioned this area wasn't just quiet, it was dangerous.
Oh, very. That isolation was a double-edged sword. The road that ran through the area connecting Otsuka and Itabashi was desolate. It was a perfect spot for robbers.
What kind of danger are we talking about?
It was infamous for tsujigiri.
Crossroads killers.
Exactly. Ronin, masterless samurai, or just common bandits who would ambush travelers to test a new sword, or simply for money. It was a genuine no-go zone if you could avoid it.
That sounds like it goes beyond just petty crime.
It was severe enough that it spawned a local legend, which really tells you something about the level of fear in the community. The legend of the Shimentu Sun, the four-faced tower.
A four-faced tower. What was its purpose?
According to the story, in 1721, the violence hit a horrifying peak. In a single night, 17 people were attacked or killed by tsujigiri.
17 in
Yep.
one night.
Yes. The villagers were so terrified they believed it couldn't be just human criminals. They thought demons were at work. So they erected this four-faced stone tower to spiritually seal away the evil and protect travelers.
A kind of spiritual ward.
Precisely. And what's fascinating is that this superstition, this belief in the tower's power, persisted right into the 20th century.
How so?
Well, an urban legend developed that if you moved the tower, disaster would follow. And sure enough, when the Marubutsu department store, which was the predecessor to the modern Parco building, was being built, they had to move the tower.
And what happened?
They moved it twice during different phases of redevelopment, and shortly after, the company faced major financial trouble and eventually went bankrupt.
Wow. Coincidence? Maybe, but a powerful story.
It really is. It shows how the area's dark, dangerous past is still kind of lingering right under the surface of all that modern commerce.
But it wasn't all danger and demons. You mentioned there was a more delightful side to the area, also tied to the water.
Yes, the paradox of Ikebukuro. The same marshy ground that made it isolated also meant it had pockets of very clean water. And this made it famous for hotorugari.
Firefly viewing.
Exactly. People would come from all around, especially to the Okiai area, to see the swarms of fireflies in the summer. It was this little pocket of natural beauty in an otherwise rugged landscape.
So a place of extremes. And there was another layer of isolation too, a political one.
Right. A large part of the area was designated as Otomayama, the Forbidden Mountain.
Forbidden to whom?
To commoners. It was a private falconry ground used by the shogun himself, specifically Tokugawa Yoshimune. So large tracts of land were just completely off limits, reinforcing that sense of emptiness and isolation.
So to sum up the Edo period, we have a wet, sparsely populated, dangerous farming village with some nice fireflies, largely ignored by the powers that be. All the ingredients were there for it to stay a backwater forever.
Precisely. It was cheap, it was empty, and it was undeveloped. And that exact combination, which held it back for centuries, was about to become its greatest asset in the age of the railroad.
Right, so the catalyst for change was steel and steam.
Yeah.
But as we've said, Ikebukuro's development was anything but planned.
Not at all. For years, the main problem was engineering. That wet, marshy ground made any kind of large-scale construction incredibly difficult and expensive. It was always easier to build elsewhere.
So when the first part of what would become the Yamato line was built in 1885, they just went right around it.
Completely bypassed it. The original Shinagawa line ran from Akabine to Shinagawa, and Ikebukuro wasn't even a consideration.
So what changed? What finally put Ikebukuro on the map in 1903?
The need for a branch line. The railway company, Nippon Railway, needed to build a new line, the Toshima line, to connect the main route to Tabata. And to do that, they needed a junction.
A place for the tracks to split. And their first choice wasn't Ikebukuro.
No, their first choice was Majiro Station, the stop just before it. It seemed more logical.
So why didn't they use Mahiro?
The geography was all wrong. Majiro is right on the edge of a plateau, so you have steep cliffs and very narrow, confined spaces. There was simply no room to build the kind of sprawling junction they needed.
You mean for all the extra tracks and switches?
Exactly. For a major junction, you need space for multiple platforms, for sidings to park trains, for switchyards, and most importantly, you need room to expand in the future. Majiro was a dead end from an engineering perspective.
So they looked one stop down the line and saw
A massive, flat, empty, and cheap piece of farmland, Ikebukuro. It wasn't chosen for its commercial potential, there was none. It was chosen because it was the only place with enough wide open space to build what they needed.
an accidental station, born out of pure engineering necessity.
That's it. So in 1903, Ikebukuro Station was built, and when it opened, the passenger numbers were, well, they were tiny.
Do we have figures on that?
The sources say in the first few years, maybe a few dozen people a day. It was a ghost station in the middle of a field. It took nearly 10 years for it to even break 800 daily users.
But the seed was planted. Once the station was there, growth was inevitable, even if it was slow at first.
It was. By 1923, before the Great Earthquake, it was already seeing over 10,000 passengers a day. The slow creep of urbanization had begun.
And we can still see a physical reminder of that early, awkward planning in the tracks today.
We can. That very sharp curve the Yamanote line takes between Otsuka and Ikebukuro, that's a relic of the original Toshima line branch. It's not a smooth, perfect circle because it was never designed as one.
Right, the Yamanote line as a full loop didn't even exist until much later.
Not until 1925. Before that, the trains ran in this big, weird, incomplete loop that was sometimes called the no-no-ji route, shaped like the hiragana character no-ron. That curve is a permanent scar from its piecemeal construction.
So the National Railway accidentally creates the station.
Yeah.
But the real explosion, the thing that sealed Ikebukuro's destiny, was the arrival of the private railway companies.
This is the absolute key to the whole story. The Tobu Tojo line arrived in 1914, and the Musashino Railway, which would become the Seibu Ikebukuro line, arrived in 1915.
And these lines were connecting Tokyo to the rapidly growing suburbs to the north and west.
Yes, bringing thousands of new commuters toward the city. But here is the most crucial, ironic twist in the entire history of Ikebukuro.
Which is?
Neither of those companies wanted their lines to end in Ikebukuro. For both of them, it was supposed to be a temporary stop.
A temporary stop.
But
so where were they trying to go?
they had much grander plans. They wanted to push their lines deeper into the established city center. Tobu wanted to extend its tracks to Otsuka, or maybe even as far as Kanda. Seibu's precursor wanted to go to Sugamo.
Why there?
Because places like Sugamo and Otsuka were already established commercial hubs. They had city tram connections, they had more people, more money. Ikebukuro was still just a field with a junction.
So what stopped them? Why did these grand extension plans fail?
Money and red tape. Building a railway through a dense, existing urban area is astronomically expensive. You have to buy up hundreds of plots of private land. You have to deal with existing roads and infrastructure. They just couldn't get the funding or the permits. The heart of the city was already locked down.
So Ikebukuro, the cheap, empty field that the National Railway chose out of necessity,
became the final stop for two massive private commuter lines for the exact same reason. It was the closest they could get to the city center before they ran out of money and options.
That's incredible. Its status as a major terminus was a complete accident. It was the result of a failed plan.
A spectacular failure, in fact. This accidental permanence is what turned Ikebukuro into the ultimate Ketsusetsuten, the nexus point. It forced millions of passengers to transfer there, whether they wanted to or not, creating a captive audience for commerce.
An audience that would soon grow exponentially thanks to a city-leveling catastrophe.
Exactly. The railways had built the skeleton. The Great Kanto earthquake of 1923 was about to put the flesh on the bones.
It's hard to overstate the impact of that earthquake on Tokyo's development. It was a complete reset.
It was. The devastation in the low-lying Shitamachi areas, the traditional heart of the city, was almost total. The ground liquefied and then massive firestorms swept through.
People realized it was simply too dangerous to live there.
So they fled. There was a mass exodus from the lowlands toward the higher, more geologically stable ground of the Musashino Plateau.
And where did they go on the plateau? They followed the train lines.
They followed the train lines? The Tobu and Seibu lines, which just happened to end in Ikebukuro, suddenly became escape routes and conduits for a massive wave of new residents looking for safe land to build on.
So Ikebukuro's initial weakness, all that empty, undeveloped land, suddenly became its greatest strength.
Overnight. There was desperate, immediate demand for housing and transit right where the railways had accidentally created a hub. The population of the surrounding areas exploded.
And this forced the government to finally invest in proper urban infrastructure.
It did. You see major roads like Meiji-dori being built in the early Showa era, right after the earthquake. This wasn't just a road, it became a major bus route and the commercial backbone for the east exit area.
And this demographic shift led directly to a political one, the creation of Toshima Ward.
Yes, in 1932, 4 small towns, Sugamo, Nishisugamo, Nagasaki, and Takata, were merged to create the modern Toshima Ward.
And the most important decision they made was where to put the new ward office.
A hugely symbolic decision. They didn't put it in the old centers of power like Sugamo or Otsuka. They deliberately chose to build it right next to Ikebukuro Station.
A clear signal that the center of gravity had shifted.
It was a political acknowledgement of an economic reality. The future of the ward was the commuter traffic pouring through Ikebukuro. Power was now concentrated at the station.
But it's interesting, for all this growth, major retail was actually slow to arrive.
very slow. Commerce was cautious. The first real department store in the area wasn't in Ikebukuro at all. It was the Shirakiya Atsuka branch near Atsuka Station.
So when did Ikebukuro get its first big store?
Not until 1935 with the Kikuya department store at the east exit.
And it didn't stay independent for long.
No, the railway companies knew exactly where the money was. In 1940, Kikuya was bought by the Musashino Railway Seibu's parent company, and that building became the foundation for the massive Seibu department store empire we know today. The battle lines for the East-West rivalry were already being drawn.
And all this laid the groundwork for the city we know today. But it was about to be wiped out and rebuilt once more.
Yes. The chaos of the post-war period would forge Ikebukuro's final modern identity in fire and desperation.
The Second World War and the Tokyo air raids were another cataclysmic event. The Chochoku-de Kyushu of April 1945 was particularly devastating for this part of the city.
It really was. Much of that new pre-war development around the east exit was just gone, burned to the ground. The area was reduced to rubble and scorched earth.
And into that vacuum, into those ruins, came the yami-ichi, the black markets.
The black markets were the lifeblood of post-war survival, and Ikebukuro was the perfect location for one.
Why there, specifically?
Because of the railways, it was a terminus. Goods, especially food, could be brought in on the Tobu and Seibu lines from the less damaged countryside and suburbs. It was a natural point of distribution for illicit trade, bypassing the official rationing system.
A logistical hub for a desperate underground economy.
Within months of the war's end, in early 1946, the first makeshift market, the Ikebukuro Renshiza Ichiba, was already up and running at the east exit.
And it just exploded from there.
It did. By 1947, there were 13 different market areas with over 1,200 stalls. It must have been an atmosphere of incredible, chaotic energy.
And the sources say almost half of those stalls were bars and eateries. People were desperate not just for food, but for an escape.
An escape that was incredibly dangerous. With no regulation, the quality of everything, especially alcohol, was atrocious and often lethal.
This is where we get into the really grim details of post-war life, the stories of the toxic liquors.
Yes. The most notorious was Kasutori. It was a cheap, crude distilled spirit, often made from sake leaves. But the stills were so primitive that it was frequently contaminated with methyl alcohol.
Which is a potent nerve toxin.
Right. People who drank it went blind or just died. Every drink was a roll of the dice.
And there was another one with an even more terrifying name. Bakudan.
The bomb. And it felt like one. It was basically fuel, alcohol, industrial ethanol mixed with a bit of water or something to make it drinkable.
That sounds absolutely horrific.
The accounts from people who drank it describe an intense burning sensation in the stomach, like you were going to explode from the inside. The common phrase at the time was that going for a drink in the yami-ichi was an act next to death.
Next to death. That's chilling. It says everything about the desperation of the era. So how did this chaotic period end?
It was shut down by the authorities. The Allied General Headquarters, or GHQ, saw the black markets as a source of crime, disease, and an obstacle to creating a regulated economy.
So they just cleared them out?
Yes. Starting around 1949 with the Roten Serire, or the Order to Remove Stalls, they forcibly demolished the markets. At the same time, the city needed to rebuild and expand the station to handle the ever-growing number of passengers. The era of the yami-ichi was quickly paved over.
And what rose from those ashes was the modern Ikebukuro, defined by the epic retail war between the two railway giants.
The department store battle royale. On the east exit, you had the reborn Seibu department store opening in 1949. And on the west exit, their rival Tobu opened its massive flagship store in 1962.
East Seibu, West Tobu, a rivalry born from their mutual failure to extend their lines decades earlier.
It created this unique, intensely competitive commercial landscape. Seibu, in particular, became a powerhouse, pioneering the idea of a town within the store, a totally self-contained world of shopping and dining.
And this intense focus on the station itself led to that famous nickname, Ikebukuro.
The station bag, yeah. Because unlike Shinjuku or Shibuya, where the city sprawls out for blocks and blocks, so much of Ikebukuro's commercial life was contained within the station complex itself. You could do everything without ever really leaving the building.
Which created that hard divide between East and West that still defines the area today.
A divide that planners are still trying to solve even now. But while the East was becoming this temple of commerce, the West was solidifying a very different identity.
Right, the cultural and educational side of Ikebukuro.
Again, it all comes back to that cheap, available land near the new station in the early 1900s. It was perfect for large institutions. The biggest move was Rikyo University relocating from Tsukiji in 1918.
And that really anchored the West Side's identity.
It did. The beautiful old red brick buildings of the Rikyo campus give the West Side a completely different feel. It feels more academic, more historical. You also have architectural treasures like the Jigaku and Maishinichikan, designed by the legendary Frank Lloyd Wright.
But it wasn't just formal education. Ikebukuro also became the heart of a bohemian art scene.
Really vibrant one. In the Taisho and early Showa periods, the area around Shinamachi and Higashi Nagasaki became home to over 100 artists' ateliers.
And this scene got a very evocative name.
It was dubbed Ikebukuro Montparnasse by the painter Hideo Oguma, a direct reference to the famous artists' quarter in Paris. It was a hotbed of Japanese modernism.
And what's amazing is the direct line you can draw from that artistic community to the birth of modern manga.
The connection is undeniable. Right there, in the same neighborhood, was the legendary Tokiwasa apartment building.
The famous manga artist dormitory.
Home to the gods of manga, Tezuka Osamu, Fujiko Fujio, the creators of Doraemon, Shotaro Ishinomori. They all lived and worked there in the creative shadow of the Montparnasse artists. That artistic DNA is baked into the neighborhood.
Which explains so much about Ikebukuro's modern identity as a subculture hub. It's the counterpoint to Akihabara.
It's the undisputed capital of female otaku culture. Akihabara has a traditionally male focus, but Ikebukuro is for a different audience. You have Otome Road, or Maiden Road, packed with stores like Animate, Mandarake, and K-Books, all catering to that demographic.
And it's not just manga and anime, it's a major center for books in general.
A huge battleground for bookstores. You have giants like Junkudo, which is one of the largest bookstores in the entire country. It's an intellectual hub as well as a subculture one.
So let's talk about the owl, the Fukuro. How did a pun become the symbol of an entire district?
Through sheer repetition and community adoption. It's just a great, memorable piece of branding. Everyone knows the Ikebukuro statue as a meeting spot.
But the surprising thing is, it's not the original owl statue.
No, it isn't. A local community group has actually certified it as the 11th in a series of owl statues they've placed around the neighborhood. It's the most famous one, but it's part of a much larger grassroots effort to embrace the symbol.
And the government is all in on it.
Completely. The owl-shaped police box, the Fukuro Kuban, the owl mascot for the Akebus, the official ward mascot is an owl. It's a total cultural takeover.
And rounding out this cultural identity is the sheer density of theaters.
It's one of the top theater districts in Tokyo, after places like Shinjuku and Ginza. The crown jewel is the Tokyo Metropolitan Theater, a massive complex with a world-class concert hall and pipe organ.
And it supports everything from high art to fringe theater.
Exactly. You have big venues like that and the Sunshine Theater, but also crucial smaller spots like Theater Green, which is a launching pad for new, young talent. It's a really dynamic performing arts scene.
So that brings us to the Ikebukuro of today and its future. The East-West divide is still very real.
It is. The East is Seibu, Big Camera, and the colossal Sunshine City complex. It's commerce and nightlife.
And Sunshine City itself is built on a site with an incredibly heavy history.
An incredibly dark history. It stands on the former site of Sugamo Prison. This was where class of war criminals were held and executed after World War II.
Building a monument to consumerism and leisure on that exact spot. It's a powerful statement about post-war Japan's relationship with its own past.
It's a story of paving over trauma with prosperity, a defining theme of modern Tokyo.
And the West Side maintains its calmer, more cultural identity.
Yes. Anchored by Rikyo University and the Metropolitan Theater, it has a more refined, less chaotic feel. It's culture versus commerce, played out across a set of railway tracks.
But the city's future vision is all about bridging that gap.
The big push now is to rebrand Ikebukuro as an international art and culture city. The new Hareza Ikebukuro complex, with its 8 theaters, is the centerpiece of that strategy. They're leaning into their artistic roots.
And the most radical part of the plan is to finally solve the Ikebukuro problem, to heal that physical divide.
Yes, the walkable town planning concept. The goal is to literally tear up the roads in front of the station exits, remove car lanes, and create huge pedestrian plazas.
To make it easy and pleasant to walk from the east side to the west side on street level.
Exactly. To finally stitch the two halves of the city together.
And the scale of the redevelopment is just immense.
It's staggering. On the west side, the entire Tubu department store area is going to be replaced by 3 massive new high-rise towers. But that project won't be finished until 2043.
2043, we're talking about a generational transformation.
And on the east side, another 33-story tower is going up, due for completion around 2027. The city is constantly reinventing itself, building ever higher.
It's just an incredible story of transformation. From a forgotten marshland bypassed by the first train lines to a global hub forged by accident, disaster, and relentless competition.
It really shows you how a city's destiny can be shaped by forces completely outside of anyone's control. A series of failures and catastrophes that somehow added up to a massive success.
So the next time you're pushing through the crowds in Ikebukuro, caught between the 2 great department stores, just remember how it all came to be. This massive modern city is built on layers and layers of forgotten history and incredible chaotic adaptation.
It really makes you question what's permanent and what's just the current chapter in a much longer story.
And that leads to a final provocative thought for you to carry with you. We've talked about how Ikebukuro's modern landmarks are built on sites of historical hardship. The department stores on the land of the dangerous black markets, Sunshine City on the grounds of Sugamo Prison. So the question is this: does this constant, rapid urban renewal actually erase that complex and often painful past? Or does it just conceal it under shiny new layers of concrete and commerce, waiting to be rediscovered? Something for you to mull over the next time you visit.